Ivan, are we ready to go? If we don't, I lack discipline and willpower, and I also forgot my Bible. Excuse me. All right, we are the advertised protocol here is that we would like to spend 45 minutes, and because I severely lack discipline, we're already late, and but I will end at 6:30, and that way you guys aren't. This is not a life sentence to be here. And so, but a couple things I wasn't sure who to expect. I wasn't sure if we were going to appeal to folks from the chapel, if we were going to appeal to Awana parents. And so we don't know. And this is the first time, and so we're not going to know. But the other thing is, we might find it more convenient. We have from 5:30 until 7 o'clock. And if we plan for 45 minutes or so, we might find it more convenient to come at 6:15 and end at 7 with the club. Or we might want to start at 5:30 and go until 6:15. So think this through as we play along with it, to see what would be best. And because we're the first ones here, our vote is going to be worth two. So if anybody comes next week, we can acknowledge them, but we won't be nice to them. Okay? So let's think about how we can do this and what is going to be best for the evening. There are refreshments in the back. I don't know if any of you saw, there's chips and things on the bottom of that. The drinks are on the top. So help yourself. And in the middle of what we're doing, feel free to get up and get something else. It's a big who cares in terms of how we're going to play this out. Water and seltzer in the cooler next to there's a cooler on the floor, so help yourself. That Ivan is doing it. So Ivan and I were talking, and this kind of is reminiscent of the pandemic. And we had just put these chairs in, and nobody was here. And so Ivan and I would come and do the studies with just him and me, him doing the tech stuff. And so we thought we probably should kick everybody else out, and he and I just go back to pandemic days. That was, and then pretending there were people here. Like, I see that hand. No, that's a stupid question. Yeah. Anyway, but what I'd like to do is I've hardly even, hi Gord, I've hardly even named this study. It's something along the lines of where do we fit? And when I say we, I am not meaning primarily, obviously the most emphasis will be on Valley Bible Chapel because that's what I know. And but we will look at the different traditions of Christianity and kind of like where do we fit? And why do we do some of the things we do? And I moved to another town. How do I find a good church? So those are the kinds of things that we'll talk about. All right? So let's open in prayer and ask the Lord to bless our already 8-minute late meeting. Okay? Father, we're thankful that we can be together. We're thankful for each person who's out. And we just pray for wisdom in terms of how to set our format here. We're grateful, Lord, that we can change, that there's nothing here written in stone, but we're grateful especially that we can be together. And so we just ask that you would bless our time. We pray for all the kids in the club. We're so thankful that club looks like it used to look tonight. And thank you for that. We think of all the kids who've gone through that club and kids who are currently in it. And we praise you for just for your word being taught there. So thank you again in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, we have always kind of difficult in a format where you guys are looking at the back of each other's heads. So why don't we do this? Just so people can plug in, let's go with first name, last name, and what town you live in, and if you have kids in Awana. Okay? This will make more sense in a little bit. John, why don't you guys start? Were you listening? That's John. Yeah, you take him out. Any place important, you don't take him. But yeah, so. Yeah, their kids were lifers here. They went all through the programs. Yeah, both in college. Wow. Some of them were in the original Awana Club, right? Yeah. You had a lot of Awana kids. Yes, including them, exactly. And she beat the major Bible doctrines into those kids. So if when our daughter came home from Africa, there's a Bible school that we're pretty familiar with, and they were looking to have her come and teach there. And so she went and interviewed, and they went to the doctrinal section. The entire faculty was there to ask her questions, and she just apparently, I wasn't there, but I got reports from some of the faculty I know. It was like, whoa, and so they asked her, where'd you learn this stuff? And she kind of lied to them. She should have said from my father, but she didn't. She said from Awana, and then she said, and they had a lot of prophecy questions, and one of the profs out there said, where'd you get that? And she said, I read the Left Behind series. And it was hilarious. She obviously had learned more than from that. But anyway, Awana has been so good to our kids. Gordon, can't talk. Gordon is from Fairlawn. Gordon has been here. Like Karen, he's part of the woodwork. So us newcomers like Mary Beth and I, these guys have laid yeah. Karen, you started coming here, you got picked up on a school bus that would go around and pick kids up, huh? Not amazing. Yeah. Mike. You say that now. Awana is our children's club. There's probably about 60 kids in there right now, maybe more. Awana stands for, I even know this, Approved Workers Are Not Ashamed. Boys and girls for his service claim. Hail Awana on the March for Truth. Hail Awana, holding forth the truth. Never mind. Yeah, so it's a kids club, and it's an international kids club. And so what we do oftentimes, if people are moving away and they're looking for a church and they don't know how to find one, we often tell them, look on the Awana website, awana.org, and look by zip code for a church. Chances are that church will believe very similarly to us, because Awana has a doctrinal statement that the churches have to sign. Now, they may have opened that up a little in the last 10 years, I'm not sure. But anyway, so. Do the work.
Maura Thompson, Bill Thompson. I used to go to this church in the 70s, so that was 1980. And then I moved away and went to Rutherford and then ended up at Northern Gospel and now we're back again. And I was baptized here.
You were baptized here. Yeah. So you guys you left here right before we came. Was that on purpose? Was that on purpose? No. Okay. No, we started about 88, so you were well gone by then. Well, good. They live here in town, yes. Long time. Probably. Yeah. Yeah. They live in the township as well. Oh. What do you like for lunch? I mean, now you had one that has already finished the program too, right? Well, kids are so busy. Yeah. Well, good, Frank. And you live, you go to the church in Old Tapan, right? Or Tapan? Tapan or Old Tapan? Okay, cool. Yeah, another fixture here out of Wana. So, John and Christine. Christine. Well, the dig that you were on. Yes. When you live in Walden. Now they're going through other things. One kid's down at Liberty, studying there. Um, yeah, so it's pretty cool. We, yeah, a lot of good stuff. Tori. Yep, Mike, Mr. Mike. Yep. Are you guys still at Brookdale or whatever it's called now? Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yep. Yeah. That church had a great history. Okay, we have next on our fun list, you. Long time. So she will be a cubby soon. Jessica. You wish. Yeah. Lives in Teaneck with your lovely sister. That's Emily. Same thing, only different. Younger. Yeah. Cool. Okay, that's us. This is us. It's not a TV program I've seen advertised. This is us. So never saw it, but it is kind of fun. Oh, Evelyn, I didn't see you there. Who are you and what are you doing here? That's the older sister. That's better. That's better. Yeah. Oh yes, it's great to. So anyway, that's who we are, and again, we wanna design this to work, and if it's not going to work, we won't do it. How does that sound? So we can do anything we want. It's brand new. It's post-pandemic. We can do whatever we want. Um, when I was in college, a long, long, long time ago, I was an education. I was a history major, psychology major, history minor, whatever, and and I got certified to be a school teacher. And the best history teacher I ever had, I just realized I forgot his name, so he obviously didn't make that big of an impact on me. But he was a man who never married, and he was a true scholar in every sense of the word. He he decided he didn't have time to pursue any kind of romantic relationship, so he didn't. What he did, he taught in the education department at Central Michigan University, home of the Chippewas. Nothing from you there. Anyway, what he would do in his sabbatical every 7 years is he, ahead of time, would go to local high schools and he would say, I'm a history prof at Central Michigan University. I am available to teach for a year for you. As long as it's high school history, I will teach um, any classes you want to give me. And I'm being paid, you don't have to pay me. Well, believe me, people were signing up for him. He was a really, really good teacher. Well, then he realized as he was in school all these 7 years, then he would come back and teach the likes of me. He said, this doesn't work because high school changes too much in 7 years. It's a completely different world every time I go back. So he worked out a deal with the university where they would continue to pay him, but he would leave every fourth year and he would teach in a local high school because he so wanted to keep current. That's what he did. Well, one of the things he told us, he said, you're going to go into high schools and some of them aren't very well funded. Now, this is the mid to late 70s when but I was a child prodigy, so I was only 8 when I was there at that age. But anyway, he'd hold up a textbook and he would say, no, you guys are going to become teachers and you're going to go into school districts, some of which have a lot of money and some of which have no money at all. And he said, but one thing you're going to find consistent there is their history books are going to be out of date. And he said, most of the books, if you were to teach right now, the latest chapters in American history would be on the Kennedy assassination, which was what, 1963, right? And this is late 70s. And he said, that's the first thing you would find. And the second thing you'll find, he said, is the history books are very dirty about this far on the pages. And the pages over here are fully clean. And the reason is they never get to that point. So he said, what you're going to do is you're going to go into a high school with kids. How old are you in high school? 14, 13, 14, up through 17 or 18, right? And so you're going to go into a school and you're going to teach history. And the first day you're there, you're going to say, okay, let's go to Mesopotamia. And he said, not only do they not know where that is, not only do they not care where that is, they might think it's the next town. And by the end of the year, if you give them a test, they won't be able to find it on a map. He said, you're going to bring them back there to what could not be any less relevant to their lives. Now, he said, sadly, if you go to the back of the book, you're going to start the Kennedy assassination, of which their parents are going to be well aware, but they're not. He said, but at least there were cars there. And so he said, I would challenge you, if you get jobs in public schools when you leave here, or private schools that are broke, commit to starting in the back of the book and work your way to the front. And that way, he said, when you only get through half of the textbook, you're going to be able to tell them what happened when their parents were kids, and then explain why it happened as you go backwards in the book. He said, what historically, how history is taught, is you go to the back of the book and you say, now these are the foundations. And because of this, this happened. And because of this, this happened. And he said, but the cycles end so many times. There's all these dead cycles. They have no impact on us today. So he said, start in the back of the book and work your way to the front. We need to do that when we look at church issues as well. We need to say, what do we have now? And then try to see what got us here. As opposed to saying, well, the church started on the day of Pentecost in the year whatever AD. I wasn't there, couldn't tell you. And then we work forward. I think it's better to go backwards, because right now, each of us who come to Valley and each of you who go to different churches, every Sunday you walk into that church and you have an order of service. And you have certain things that need to be checked off, or you didn't have church that day. And I say that seriously. We do different things because, well, for reasons. But if we started to go back, and many of you that aren't from Valley are from good Bible teaching churches that have traditions very similar, I would guess, to ours here. But there's going to be some differences between us. And those are the kinds of things, when I say, where do we fit? Those are the kinds of things I would like for us to look at and to discuss as we come out on Sunday nights. So I will, hopefully after 2 or 3 sessions, we'll at least have a name for this class, all right? But as it is right now, and I would hope, and a room like this is not conducive to discussion. It almost works for question and answers, but the goal is going to be to have some meaningful discussion, to have as many questions, and please stop me if I need to repeat anything, or if you didn't hear something, or you think I'm crazy. So stop. So that's how we're going to approach this. And again, let's have conversations after tonight and next week, before and after. And if we want to adjust this time frame, the ground rules is we can't start before 5:30. We can't go later than about 2 minutes before 7. And I think 45 minutes is a pretty decent chunk of time. If you would rather go 30 minutes or an hour, it's for us to decide. And we can put that time frame wherever we want in the 5:30 to 7 o'clock. Okay? So have an opinion on that by soon. All right? Okay. Now let's just, for the sake of argument, the churches represented here are pretty similar, I would guess. Right? Yeah. For the sake of discussion, when I say we, could I be so bold as to include all of us, unless there's a real distinct difference between Valley and another? Like if I say, well, we do this, you might say, wait a minute, we've never done that. What are you, crazy? No. Yeah, so, but for this, just to make things easier, we is going to be the collective we, no matter if we come to Valley every Sunday or not. Now, obviously, I'm going to favor Valley because I don't go anyplace else, all right? This is where I go. This is what I know what goes on. But I do have a lot of experience with other churches via friends and discussions and reading. And so I think I'm pretty comfortable talking about your church, wherever that is. But when I say we, it's going to mean all of us, but heavy emphasis on Valley. So historically, we fall into a broad category of churches. And this is, again, the collective we, not just Valley. What would that broad category of churches be called? Well, the whole church, yeah, that's the ultimate correct answer. The church universal is every believer in Christ who's ever lived and who's currently with Christ in heaven. That's the universal church. Now, we have 100 different churches probably around here, right? I don't know how many. Probably, yeah. You know, my dad would say you can't swing a dead cat without hitting about 6 of them right here. But that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of churches. And anybody here from Grace Church in Ridgewood? Yeah, good church. Why is Grace a stone's throw from us and we're here? Why aren't we all over there? Why aren't they all over here? Why not? We have better coffee. There you go. I would say I think it's a handsomer preacher. That's what I think. But we have Awana. There you go. Yeah, you see, we're the same. If we laid out Grace's doctrinal statement and if we laid out Valley's doctrinal statement, they would be almost identical. But yet we have 2 separate bodies of believers. And while it would be wonderful to have more fellowship with Grace because we're very, very close, it's hard to put together. We just don't, right? I wish we did. So what do we call the things that might be different, Grace and here, would be our what? Preferences, yeah. We like to meet at whatever time. We like to have an order of service that goes a certain way. We have different distinctives. We have different things we emphasize as being important. Those preferences can become pretty important. Now, the broad group that everyone here's church would fall into is a little smaller than the universal church. We are evangelicals. Okay? Now that term has been around for a long time. That term, they were using this term in the early 1900s. And it came about, what word is in evangelical? Evangel. And what is the evangel? It's the good news. It's a Greek word, euangelion, and angelos, angel, messenger. That's the word. And whenever in Greek, if you put an EU in front of the word, it means well. So what would the euangelion be? The good message. Or the what? The gospel. What do we sing in Awana? Good news, Christ died for me. Yeah. Euangelion, evangel. We are evangelicals. And that word started to be used of us. It could have even been derogatory, like they preach the gospel. Maybe they said, if it was a kind of derision, they only preach the gospel, or whatever. So we are evangelicals. Now, and I'm picking on Grace because they're close and many of us know where it is. Many of us have been there. Where is Grace's denominational headquarters? They don't have one. Where is Valley's denominational headquarters? Right here. Yeah, exactly. We don't have one. Yeah. So now you have an organization of churches that has no structural organization. Now, for those of us who maybe come from a Roman Catholic background, or any of us from an Anglican, or I guess here in America, that would be the Episcopal denomination. And we're probably all most familiar with Roman Catholicism. What diocese is a Roman Catholic church in the township? What diocese do they belong to? Newark. Yeah. So there's a structure in Newark that has influence and care for the churches in that. That Newark diocese, whatever it's called, they would be related to another group, probably in the Northeast or maybe the Atlantic Sea coast, I don't know, which would be under an American, I don't even know what these terms become, who would ultimately be under who? Rome and the Vatican, yeah. So there you would have a spelled out and very defined order. But then you get here with us, and this is it. Yeah. Well, we are because we don't belong to a denomination. But I guess one of the problems, and I'm glad what he said was, so we would be non-denominational. Yes. But I'm a bit uncomfortable to be listed as a non-denominational church. And that's just me. Non-denominational can imply some things that might not be good to imply. I guess I would prefer, if I were the Pope at Valley, because we don't have a Pope, if I were, I would say we would be an independent Bible teaching church. Okay? Because that's what we are. Jess? I'm sorry? Well, it was a way to describe churches a long time ago that broke away from denominations. And what's happened is that non-denominational tag has become, or could, in some instances, become equated to ecumenicalism, that we're an ecumenical church. And that would kind of imply anything goes. You see? So now that's not the case with non-denominational, but non-denominational lacks a little more definition than I would rather lack. Um, so non-denominational means we do not belong to a denomination. It could mean we're against denominations. It could mean we've broken away from a denomination. It can't, well, but with no structure. With no structure. Yeah. Could be. Yeah. We are our Valley Bible Chapel could be very denominational, even though we have no denomination. We don't want to be. No one would ever admit to it. But there's a social pressure among churches. This is true with Valley. I'm sure it's true in the Bible church movement. When there is no defined structure, there is a pressure to more closely embrace the church's distinctives in order to gain acceptance with other churches who come from the same tradition. So in other words, if you're going to wear head coverings at your church, ladies, I'm going to wear an extra long one. You see? If you're going to, preach for 40 minutes on Sunday, I'll show you how good I can be. I'm going to preach for 45. It's this kind of pressure to hold to, now where you really see this, Evelyn, you and I have talked about this a bit, and Jess and Emily a little bit, in first-generation immigrant churches in America. Are any of you folks you guys were involved in anybody else involved in a first-generation immigrant church? Ivan? Yeah, you were, but you were on the tail end of it. It's just interesting and I don't care what immigrant group it is. If they love Christ and want to serve him carefully, they are going to push the traditions from home. And they're going to push them hard. You see? It's just so interesting. And again, we can't stereotype and say, well, a first-generation immigrant church is going to do such and such, but pretty much they will. It's really cool to look at. And again, I'm talking about groups who preach the gospel and love Christ. Because you see, those of us who preach the gospel and love Christ, we have even more reason to honor him in the way we think he should be honored. Because we love him and we love his word. All right.
I heard there's over 30,000 denominations.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. Well, because of their distinctions. And again, I'm not making little of this tradition, but in America, in this area, we are a strong Dutch-influenced area here. And the Dutch Reformed churches we can drive around and get a church history lesson. Because you would find and again, I don't know this well, all of the titles, but there are some very conservative Dutch churches, Ebenezer Reformed churches. They're called Reformed. Then there is a denomination called the Reformed denomination. Our son over in Africa works closely with a lovely doctor and her husband on the mission field, and they're from the Reformed denomination. Then what group came out of the Reformed denomination as you drive around and see churches? Christian Reformed. You see, so as individual churches became discontent with their denomination, usually because their denomination was going too liberal, because their seminaries were becoming liberal, they would break off. They didn't want to leave that tradition altogether, but they didn't want to support that school maybe, or they didn't want to support what the denomination was allowing in the churches. So they would pull out and form. So then we went from some really conservative Reformed groups to the Reformed denomination to the Christian Reformed denomination. People who started a generation ago to pull out of the Christian Reformed denomination started the Orthodox Presbyterian. So anyway, that's where we get 30,000. Yeah, Ivan. We are not a denomination in the view that we have no corporate headquarters, we have no schools, there's no structure there. So if we had a problem at Valley and we wanted help from an outside church that maybe has been through a similar problem, we don't really have a place to go for that. Now we all know people from different churches. We might say, well, there's a good church, there's a good assembly over here. Let's see how they made it through this issue. But there's not a clearly defined denominational structure. We have a fellowship, again, undefined, a fellowship of churches who do things very similarly to how we do them. Okay, so I think John was kind of hinting at, yeah, why aren't we a denomination? We're not. And I think there's other churches that we would fellowship with and want to fellowship with, especially if there were problems. Here's my point. We got to wrap up. It's already 6:32. When you look at our camp of Christianity, evangelicalism, a number of years ago, have any of you heard of the NEA? No, that's the National Education Association. NAE, National Association of Evangelicals. That's a group that meets together once a year, and it's kind of it's a good group. They're kind of trying to lasso evangelical churches to kind of, not to form a denomination at all, but to kind of to be an association. So I always want to say NEA, the NAE, I think I could never work for them because that would be like herding cats. It's not going to happen, right? But they exist to bring some structure, to bring some benefit to churches like ours who have no denominational ties. Evangelicals, and I better stop with this, evangelicals in the past 5 to 10 years have hit some pretty shaky grounds. If you read any of the stuff, I try to keep up. I don't. I try to keep up on some of these things. Understanding Evangelicalism in America Today. This was 2021, August 2021 article. Excellent article. Herding cats. That's what it is. It's herding cats. Where have evangelicals in the past 30 years taken the biggest beating? What issues? Politics. That has been all these things. There's a lot of stuff out there. A lot of evangelicals have said we don't want to be called evangelicals anymore because of the close association with conservative American politics. Some people are conservative American people, politically conservative, but they don't like some of the things that evangelicals have done. That's been a big beating. Where's another beating we've taken in some of our big churches, or not our big evangelical churches? What's been happening in the last 10, 20 years? Liberal theology has come in, but when the liberal theology comes in, they're gonna kind of backpedal out of event. You know what I mean? If they buy it. Immorality from the pulpit. Immorality of the pastors and church leaders. Yeah. And man, the internet is great, and having 24-hour news cycles is fantastic. But our dirty laundry gets out there real fast. Yeah, real fast. And it gets embellished maybe on the way. I hope it gets embellished because I hope we're not really doing some of this stuff. Who does? Yes. Yep. And he's doing it more on a theological. This fellow that we know, his mom comes to the chapel here, he's really on the cutting edge of younger Christians, 20s, 30s, who are deconstructing their faith. He is kind of in the vanguard of pointing this out and reaching out to help. But he runs into a lot of among churches, immorality of the pastors and some church leaders. Oh, yeah. Yep. It is, yeah. BSF Bible Study Fellowship? No, that's a women's, a kind of an international women's Bible study group. No. I'm a little ticked off about that. No, that's why we go. Never mind. I got we're online, right? Yeah, thank you, Ivan. So, yeah, my daughter teaches one of the down in Mississippi. And I used to years ago, I went to Dallas Seminary, and one of our most recent presidents, he is on the board for BSF, Bible Study Fellowship. It's a good organization, not a denomination. They basically produce materials for women to engage the community. What's the one that a lot of women go to here? CBS. What's that? That's Community Bible Study. A lot of women from here would go to CBS. There's a couple of chapters. I think most of the women that go from here go to the one in Midland Park, right? Yeah. So that's a very similar group. But yeah, so that wouldn't be considered a denomination. That would be an organization that provides written materials and some direction for women's Bible studies, Bible Study Fellowship.
But when they write those materials, they must have some kind of theology background.
They do. And I would assume, based on the one person I know on the board, I would assume it's pretty solid theology because he's solid. From the kind of Dallas Seminary perspective, dispensational, premillennial. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you're allowed to. Yeah. I know CBS does that, and so does BSF. If someone is teaching, and it sounds like they're teaching, Reformed theology, a dispensationalist there is not allowed to confront that. They could write something. So yeah, so they're pretty vanilla, and I say that in a positive way. But they stay away from strong distinctions. Is that fair? Those of you who know. Right. Yep. Yeah. And they can tell how they got saved. All that stuff is great, and they encourage it. And you can know what church they go to, but they're not allowed to really kind of proselytize for their own church, which, good idea. Okay, but that would not be denomination, that would be association. The Southern Baptist Convention is a convention. It's not a denomination. Interesting. All right, we're evangelicals. We're in that category. Lord willing, next week we will bump back in history a little bit to kind of take an overview of the major strands of Christianity. And again, where do evangelicals fall in that? And where do we fall in evangelicals? And I got to tell you, the last 4 or 5 years, reading this stuff about evangelicals is fascinating because we're seeing a real movement, I think, in many ways, a lot of it of God, to bring Christians back to the Bible. And they're rebelling against a lot of this ancillary stuff that's going on. So we live at exciting times. Please feel free to get something to drink or to go home or whatever you want to do. I mean, I'm going to be here because my wife's in Awana, so I'm staying here till the end. But I don't want to intrude on your... That's right. Hey, I got the keys. I could leave. What... any last things while we're still sitting here about this whole evangelicalism discussion? Is this kind of a format okay? Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if we're seeing more pastors. We are seeing more pastors falling morally. But exactly. I don't know that the situation is any worse than it was 100 years ago. But I think now with the internet and the news cycles and people, you got to keep a news channel open 24/7. You got to talk about something. And nobody wants to talk about kittens. So you got to find this stuff. And the more you look, the more you find. And so I don't know, it's probably worse, but and I think what you're saying, Mary Beth, this whole idea of adoration, we were not built for that. And we can't handle that. Yeah. Yeah. Enoch. Yeah, he got taken out before he had a chance to mess up. Yeah. Joseph, there's nothing negative said about Joseph. Yeah. Caleb was pretty decent. The key is to dying young. That's what it all. Yeah. Don't go all millennial on me. Yeah. 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 She's really my sister. Yeah, I'm married to her. But yeah. Yeah, we're scoundrels. Yeah.
But those pastors, about those pastors who fall, but do you believe, like the Armenians say, you could fall and lose your salvation?
Yeah, that we will talk about when we get to doctrinal distinctions. You're closer than me. Hit him. Strike him. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that's gonna. We're gonna go under doctrinal distinctives, and that's where a lot of churches have a lot of the 30,000. That's one issue that they've formed around. Yep. Excellent. Boy, I don't know. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The evangelicals who have left evangelicalism to go to either Roman Catholicism or Anglicanism, That's one of the reasons they go. Because of the what? Yeah, they want the structure. They want the view of truth. They want that. And that's good. And I would want that too. I wouldn't go about it that way. But yeah, so there is something very appealing of I can leave Washington Township as a Roman Catholic, and I can drive to Mississippi and go to church, and it's going to be pretty much the same. There's something very appealing about that. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep. 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 Tori? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 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 Oh, he trashes everything we do. Yep. 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 Exactly. Go back to what John brought up about 30,000 denominations, whatever that is. Maybe it's 60, maybe it's, I don't know. But go back to that. These different denominations form. You know, before we had cars, when the parishes broke up, when had the different parishes, before we had cars, I went to church in town. I wasn't going anywhere else. But now I heard that parish, that's supposed to be just like ours, I heard they got this old guy preaching who's really good. I'm going to go there. And I can now because I can get my car and drive there. So it's not just one thing that has built into this. There's cars, there's money for gas, there's all kinds of things. Now throw the internet on top of that. Food, yeah. I choose our church based on where the food is. It's got the best food. I'm saying about the teaching the scriptures, the best food. Now, yeah, I've said we've quit for 20 minutes now. We're still going. But nobody got up to have something more to eat or drink. Tell you what, I'm going to close in prayer. Then you might feel freer to get up and have something to eat, and we can continue discussing. Father, thank you that you brought us together. We got a list of things we're so grateful for. And we have a list of things we're concerned about. I pray that our kind of dipping into a little bit of this recent history would prove to be an encouragement to us and not a discouragement. So just thank you. And thank you for each one here again, for these Awana kids, Lord, fill them with your word. In Jesus' name, amen.